Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 5 People on the Go, the show that's all about tools and approaches for success from the most brilliant people. My name is Meital Zavi, I'm your host, and today we have Avishai Sam Bitton. And when I did the research for this episode, I gotta say that there's just so much that you did, and there's so much I can say about you that it made it impossible to do a decent intro. So I'm just gonna try. You have 2 companies. You founded 2 or 3?
I founded 2 companies.
2?
One of them
and you sold one of them.
One of them got sold to LinkedIn last year.
And you are also an angel investor, and you invested in many companies, and you've done a lot. And like the people that are not watching this video, he's also very young. So that's quite impressive, I gotta say. Now, but I brought you here for a specific topic because right now, everybody are talking about ChatGPT. It's big, it's scary, how can we use it? And not a lot of people have the answers, and today we're going to try giving the answers. Are you ready for it?
I'm totally ready for it.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. A lot of people are excited about ChatGPT, but they're also kind of scared from it. So let's try calming everyone down first.
Okay, well...
What is it, AI?
I'm going to try to calm people down, and hopefully it will be some kind of comfort to know that ChatGPT, in a sense, isn't anything new, right? It's been around, just you don't know it as ChatGPT because ChatGPT is just a user interface that now we, the public, got into the world of GPT. So the technology that a company called OpenAI has, GPT-3, has been out for almost 2 or 3 years. I don't necessarily remember the timeline. But 2 years ago, a startup came into my office and asked me to invest based on the same technology that you're seeing now. And last I checked, that technology that is powering the startup I invested in did not change the way we work right now. Robots are not replacing people, but that startup, and their name is Q, they gave the power to people to do more with the time they have. And the same thing goes for the second AI startup that walked through my office doors, metaphorically, because that's the startup I actually invested after a 20-minute phone call with an amazing female founder named Danielle Daphne, who has a company called Peach AI. And when she explained to me that the same technology that you can basically use for creating text and editing and getting information can also recognize what's happening in a video and can automatically edit it, that for me was, a huge pain point because I was a video editor spending a lot of time slicing and dicing my videos. I don't have to tell you that for every minute of footage that you have, you might spend an hour at least to edit. So yeah. That was another startup that I knew that would not change the way we work in a way that, again, robots will replace humans, but it will give power to humans to do more in less time. And I think if you go to Peach AI's page, they actually have them and their own employees doing videos on it. And you can just see how people who have done no video editing training in the past are actually editing their own videos in horizontal or vertical format. And it looks pretty great for people who have never, trained to do Adobe Premiere or CapCut or anything of the apps that are running right now.
Well, that's not calming at all. Not even a little bit, especially as a video editor. I'm trying to understand. Okay, let's maybe try to treat it a little bit more maturely, because the technology is here. There's no reason to be scared of it. So let's talk about how we can utilize it. So you gave a really good example with Peach AI that they use, they just take long videos and I guess slice them into shorter ones. Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, so it's, I think even more than that. It's the ability to choose, do I want to now edit the video as one whole video? Or do I want to take certain parts of a video and slice and dice them? You have the option to do different things if you teach the AI to do different things. Because the AI it's a buzzword, right? Like, artificial intelligence. But what is it? It's a result of a lot of machine learning. What is the machine learning? It's a result of a lot of inputs that you basically tell the machine, this is good, this is not good, this is good, this is not good. And you do that millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of times until the machine learns. So, for example, let's say image recognition, right? How do you teach the machine how to recognize from the camera when we're drinking water, when we're not? These things have been existing a long time. Technology that Microsoft has called Lobe AI actually created a completely open to use platform that could recognize hand gestures. And if you're drinking or not drinking enough in the middle of the day, you could really train the machine with all kinds of very simple recording, yes, no. And that was way before OpenAI became a name that we talked about. So it really is all about training machines. And then the result of training machines is AI. So if we want to think about who are the people behind the AI, it's mostly us training them. We've been doing this for years, and I'll give you probably the best example ever. If you ever had to do a CAPTCHA of like choosing traffic lights or choosing boats or buses as a security measure to enter your Gmail or to enter any kind of platform that was kind of suspecting you're a bot.
Yeah.
You're the person training that AI, that machine. And we can choose to stop training them and they will stop learning at that point. But as long as we keep training them, they will get smarter. And then we have to ask ourselves why we are training them and what do we want to accomplish. So in the case of the traffic lights or buses, we help train autonomous cars. And autonomous cars, even though there is the technology, to my knowledge, I still have to order a Uber driver who is a human. And that car that they drive, if it's a Tesla, might have technology that can help them drive better, but it's not replacing them.
So basically, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that AI purpose, like the way AI works, is just identifies what's right and what's wrong in a way. Like just the most basic perspective of it. You say it identifies if it's a red light or a green light. It identifies if it's a car or a bus. That's the way it works.
So there's a story that I can't confirm because, everything that comes out of China needs to be taken with some kind of hint of salt.
Yeah.
But they apparently implemented AI in their government website, and it was supposed to be to help the citizens. And at one point, it started to basically act unexpectedly because the kind of interactions they had with the citizens, they understood that the citizens are not necessarily liking the way they're living. So they shut down that AI because it started talking back to citizens in a way that the government didn't approve. So again, it would not reach that point without people interacting with it. So we have to be wary of people teaching the machine things that are maybe not moral or things that might be controversial. And if we teach the machines that, for example, things that, maybe very provocative, like women's rights are not equal as men's rights. So that could be an AI in one country learning that because that's the rule of law there. Or that capitalism is not the best form of governing and fascism is. If these inputs go into an AI, then we can find ourselves in a situation where maybe AI is becoming more dangerous than helpful. And again, it all comes back to what we input.
Okay, but right now, things like ChatGPT, they take their information from the internet, right? Like they just search everywhere.
Most AI platforms have information until a certain point of time because when they usually release a version of it, they release a version that they kind of put an end date to the amount of information they inputted in. So, for example, for GPT-3, which is very similar in the technology that you're seeing on ChatGPT, right? There's all kinds of things that were either redacted or added in so we can have a easier interface. But GPT-3, the API, to my knowledge, for example, doesn't have information more than to now December 2022 for sure. And from a few weeks ago, then I checked, it was up to December 2021. So like in terms of the knowledge of what happened and what they kind of, know about information that's across the web, they have access until a certain date. And then when you have access until a certain date, you understand that in order to really use AI for something happening right now in the present, you're probably going to have to build your own custom models that you're inputting things right now in the present.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. So if it works like that, it means that the chat also picks up opinions.
So again, you're using the word chat, and I like to go to the model behind it, or the technology behind it, because again, the chat GPT is just a user interface, right?
Yeah. So like just the database it goes to.
I think that we've tried to teach AI for a long time emotions, because I think that was always the kind of holy grail. Can we teach the computer to recognize the one thing that is very unique to humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what differentiates us from the machines?
Yeah.
We have emotions, they don't. And then we started training the machines to learn emotions. Now we can ask the machine to give us an output based on specific emotions. So I can write to an AI interface, write me please a story that is funny, that is sarcastic, and that is romantic. And since we've trained the machine through feeding it endless amount of books or even stand-up comedy shows, there has been groups of people that fed the machines just the captions of comedian videos, and teach them the difference between a comedian that is racist in the jokes and a comedian that is sexist in the jokes. You can actually ask to have a script almost for anything. And for example, ChatGPT has all kinds of limitations of what you can ask them to bring out, because they don't want to, kind of shake too many trees and to get people upset. But you can actually work on some models with no limitations, and you can ask for a very, let's say, far from politically correct script, story, a comedy sketch, etc. And I think that it is going to be very hard to recognize soon what is human text and what is AI written text, just on the fact that we're seeing AI deal with comprising emotions into the outputs that's bringing better. It's being better in understanding how to bring emotions into text. And I am pretty positive that one of the things that is going to maybe freak out people a little is that in the future, AI will be able to understand what state we're in and what emotion we're in just based on our body language, because that is another thing that the machines are being trained to based on videos. When is someone looking sad? When is somebody looking anxious? What is the body language that kind of is the common between people in these different feelings? So that will be maybe a bit of freakish for people, but I think it will give the ability for a lot of different industries to actually help humans remotely in all kinds of situations.
Interesting. Maybe even without them saying that they need help.
So I'll give you an example of a company I invested in called Sensei AI, which uses a very advanced technology to help people that don't necessarily know they need help. So they use it through audio. And Sensei AI, to my knowledge, are right now implemented in homes of seniors and senior care centers. And they actually use the audio to recognize maybe patterns of breathing, maybe something that's happening in the environment that senior is in through audio. And the machine is trained to know when that senior actually needs help, even if it's maybe a health issue that's developing that could be recognized through audio. And it's very hard to recognize through just looking at someone. So that is, for example, a way to use these kinds of training models for the good. And I think that it will help people live a longer life because we'll be able to recognize people in some form of distress or people with all kinds of health issues that they don't necessarily know about that they have it yet. So I think that would be a great net positive for humanity.
Yeah, that sounds great. So let's talk about that now, because I feel that AI has this scary vibe to it. But like you say, it can also be very helpful. Let's talk about how we can use AI.
So in my title, at 8Fig, I'm marketing guy. I'm a growth guy. I'm sometimes, an operations guy. I wear so many hats, and the time I have on my hands is, not great, because you have a lot of different managers that you want them to succeed, and you have a lot of different goals that you set for yourself. And if you have ambitious goals, then the bar is really high. So how do you actually reach a situation where you manage to accomplish all this? And AI is a great way to kind of create all kinds of shortcuts to tasks that weren't the kind of tasks that used a lot of mental capacity, not a lot of intelligence, but they were just mundane tasks. So I'll give you an example. I wanted to write a test for one of our new roles. And instead of writing a 3-page test, I just put into ChatGPT exactly what I'm looking from the candidate, what I want them to be able to exhibit. And then I asked ChatGPT, can you write a test that will find me this type of candidate? And that worked wonderful. I got 70% of what I wanted in one hit of a button. And that was just enough to save me an hour of my time. Another thing that we did was that we actually looked for influencers that we wanted to work with. So we used basically the platforms that create messages that are personal in nature. So I can send at scale messages using this kind of personal approach and creating a conversation based on what people do. So kind of taking their bios, inputting them, and creating a message that will hook them, right? Once the hook works, then I, as a human, move in to continue the conversation. But at least in the initial stage, to kind of replicate myself times 50, I have the ability to now send 50 personal messages instead of one. And that is a huge net positive for me in my day-to-day. Now, if you're looking beyond me, if you're looking at people who work under me, how are they using AI? You have just as good as an example with designers. Designers today have tools that can help them remove things faster than ever from the background. They can remove the background itself from an image or of an object in an image. There are many things that designers today use to do very manually with the clicks of the mouse, that with just prompting, this is what I want to happen on this image, that can actually happen. And I think that designers are probably the people who are going to freak out the most about where do they fit in this AI world. In the same time, I think that the designers that will master AI will break the glass ceiling of what the compensation for a designer can and should be. Because they are finally going to be in a position to have somewhat of the same recognition that engineers had. They're going to be able to utilize technology in a scalable way that doesn't necessarily, works in the way that we were used to, in terms of how much output can a designer put out there in a day. If a designer can do 10x the output in 2023 versus what they did in 2022, I argue that the designer is worth at least 2x the compensation. And that is a game changer in the world of design.
Mm-hmm. So you said you can use it for interviews, for writing tests. You mentioned lead generation and reaching out. And you've mentioned just designing, which just means like putting more of your output out there, I guess.
Yeah, I think that if you want to think about it this way, let's say I give my designer a very mundane task to remove all kinds of I would say irrelevant background noise out of an image, or maybe to just blur the background around, a photo of two people from an event, or let's say even our video, right? We're going to have a thumbnail.
Yeah.
And that thumbnail, in order to make it probably pop, we might want to blur the background.
Mm-hmm.
If you can take a bunch of frames and blur the background with a click of a button because you trained your personal AI to blur backgrounds in a certain way, that's great, because you can probably now test 100 different thumbnails, and you don't have to go one by one and just clicking with the mouse around our figures and doing the blur on Photoshop one by one. That's the kind of output I'm talking about. You can do much more in a less amount of time. And I'm the kind of person to argue, and obviously, I'm copying the great Gary Vee saying, it's a numbers game. Like, if you can do 100 different posts a day, do 100 different posts a day. So imagine a designer taking all my tweets, putting them in an AI model and turning them out into nice images. And I every day can put out into the world 100 Instagram stories and Facebook stories and TikTok stories with those tweets. That is just one example of how you can scale your content to infinity using an AI model you train to do something very, very specific.
I understand the example you gave about the designers, blurring the background, that makes sense. But for things like reaching out to people, people can tell from a mile away if this is a bot that's writing to them or a real person.
Not necessarily. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'll put in a blank statement and then move to the example. Most cold emails suck. They are not great, because the data shows we do not respond to most cold emails. In the best case for most cold emails, you look at them and you read them, and then you don't respond. Some of them, we start reading them, and then after one sentence, we decide it's a cold email. I don't have to read the next. Like, it's probably not relevant to me. And then I invested in a company 2 years ago called Calendar AI, and they actually showed that there's a misunderstanding of why cold emails don't work. It's not because they don't sound human enough. It's because humans don't work in a methodology. Humans do not work in a methodological way to actually get their emails to be better. So, example, Calendar AI writes the emails in different shapes and forms until it gets the right email that gets responses. Humans will sometimes work with the same email that's not getting responses for months or years. And the only reason they won't change it is because they think that the person they're emailing is not interested, when in fact, the person they're emailing is just not hooked. And it's all about hooks. For the same reason somebody's going to click on this video, title. The same reason you're going to read an email until the end, first 2 lines. Humans working with AI can actually be a superpower, because the human can look at the prospect and say, here's the information that I think is relevant about the prospect. Here is an AI mechanism that knows how to write great hooks. Let's tell the AI who I'm emailing, and let's get an AI-generated email, which is personalized to someone, and that will actually generate a chance to get more responses in less amount of time, with basically, in theory, the option to email to infinity in kind of, in a world where you don't go into the spam inbox.
Actually, I agree with you, because I've been using ChatGPT for writing the titles for my videos, and I've been noticing improvement, because it knows what's good.
I think the biggest issue we have as humans, we have a bias. And if you work with these models who don't have a bias and they don't have like the subjectivity around something, right? Like we have this emotional connection to our craft as creators. The ChatGPT is not emotionally connected to our video. It is looking to do what we wanted it to do. We wanted it to give us a good title for a specific video. And if you describe what's in the video, why it's interesting, there's a good chance that it will come out with one result that our brain might have not been able to give so fast or at all.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about more examples because I really like what you said about the cold emails and I think it really opens your mind. So what else can we do with it?
So I think that one of the things that we can do with it down the line is to really improve our business, right? There's this enterprise world where companies like Palantir and maybe some more legacy companies like IBM and maybe Amazon and Google are working with their, cloud technology, AI, to really help bigger companies do things like reducing cost of servers, knowing where to cut staff, things that are really on a very high level with these companies. It's very hard for us to kind of grasp the processes they're going through and how they're utilizing AI. But let's talk about me and you or people with small, medium businesses. They are about to get access to the kind of watered down specific versions of those things that the big companies have. So me and you will be able, for example, to manage our expenses smarter, right? The AI will probably learn patterns of our expenses and it will know in certain times to direct us either to do or stop doing certain things. I think that once we, give it access to our bank statements, we give it access to our credit cards, it will actually be the best kind of money manager we ever had. So, how only the celebrities used to have money managers, we might have a money manager in our pocket. I think the next thing that AI will be able to do is to learn what we like, what we don't like, what gives us a good feeling, what gives us a bad feeling. And it will be able to plan for us things like trips. So in the past, there were many attempts to create apps that will make a perfect trip per the person that the app is working with. So, for example, you and me have a very different idea of what's an awesome trip. And in the past, it didn't work. And now there's a higher likelihood to give an AI a request to create the best trip for me based on I like this, I don't like that. And you might get a plan that's anywhere between 80 to 90% accurate about every attraction it offers you, every restaurant, even the hotel you should book. So that's another thing that I think AI is coming in. And I think the last thing that, is going to be really in our day-to-day life, I think that we're going to see more customer service, more recommendations from companies we're working with when we want to buy something from somewhere. So we're probably going to be walking into clothing stores soon, or even when we're shopping online, and that customer service representative that used to be hiding in the chat would be replaced by an AI that actually knows better what we're looking for. So another company I invested in called Rep AI is basically moving out that remote worker that usually sat in the chat box in the e-commerce store, and they're putting a smart salesperson, somebody who's not there to just support you, but to recommend something to you. So for example, those shoes look great with this shirt. So that's the kind of things that Rep will be able to do that not necessarily a customer support person can do, because customer support person can only have so many conversations in one time. The AI sitting on a site can have endless amount of conversations, help an endless amount of people. Imagine walking into a clothing store and every person that is shopping and browsing around the store has their own salesperson next to them.
That's interesting. But on the other hand, I think the best salespeople are usually people's people. People that can read people's emotion, because it's not what the person says he wants. It's about what he doesn't say.
And that goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, that the AI is getting better at recognizing emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it is kind of bridging the gap through data. So the AI knows what you bought in the past because there's a lot of information buying and transferring going between companies. It might be just enough to give you a good enough recommendation to push you into a purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be times that the AI will be completely correct, just like a really great salesperson. And we've all been there when a salesperson pushes us to buy something we completely regret the minute we get home and try it.
Yeah.
So I think the AI will have those same traits. The only thing is that you're going to be able to have the equivalent of thousands, if not tens of thousands, salesperson that work in the same time for a fixed cost versus the need to, completely staff a call center or a chat center filled with people to kind of support everyone. So the Zara, H&M's of the world and an e-commerce seller that just started yesterday will all tap into the same kind of technology to help their customers find the best product for them.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about the small business owner. How can they start? We talked about a few use cases. How do you actually do it?
So I think that the first thing that small business owners should do if they want to kind of jump into the deep waters of utilizing AI is actually working first with companies that give services. You don't have to build everything on your own on day one. So I just talked about a bunch of companies since we started talking, and each one of them is specializing in a different aspect of AI. And just by using those products, you understand the capabilities that the AI has. Once you understand the capabilities and you kind of map the different capabilities AI has, then you can start thinking, how can you custom tailor something specifically to your needs? And when you have that kind of eureka moment of, here's the specific need my small business has. Here is what I want to accomplish that I didn't see any product on the market that's offering me that. Then you can move ahead to talk to either freelance developers, agencies, or even bringing in-house a chief technology officer. I've seen e-commerce stores even doing that, small, medium businesses bringing people who are passionate about building specific AI solutions. And one of the most fascinating things I've seen in the last year and a half, 2 years, is that there were some companies that brought in somebody to build an AI-related project, and it could, just be a simple feature to help the business, but it was actually spun off to be its own company because it solved an issue so well. So I believe that a lot of people are going to be building businesses through building first features that solve something in their small business, and finding out that they actually solved something that is a pain point for many other people. And that will turn into an opportunity for small, medium businesses to actually become technology companies down the line.
Mm-hmm. And what do they need in order to start building? Do they need, what do they even ask for? They ask for an AI specialist?
So my second company, Brainy, is a design partner with a company called AI21 Labs, which is kind of a competitor of OpenAI. And AI21 Labs, we approached them with our use case, and they assigned to us someone great that helps us build things together with them. So the companies who are behind the user interfaces that you're using of all kinds of companies, the engines are really happy to work with large enterprise and small, medium businesses on building different solutions to different use cases. We're right now sitting in Austin. A company called Jasper AI is probably one of the most famous AI companies in the world. And I sat with the CEO a few months ago here in the city. And it was amazing to see how they utilize different engines and combine them into a solution that, in terms of the user interface, was so easy to use that you don't really need to kind of worry what's the engine behind it. You're just getting the results you were looking for, no matter if you're looking for a product description for your Amazon product, a description for your YouTube video, or just writing a simple blog post. They showed that you can build every use case by either working with one engine, combining a few, or even combining many. So, for example, when you want to translate something into a different language and do a prompt that you're used to. That might require a combination of different AIs. So I totally recommend looking at OpenAI, looking at AA21 Labs, and seeing what they can offer your business if you're trying to build something. And I want to go back to that first business that I invested in the AI space called Q. They exhibited such amazing abilities to create a tailored solution that they are a preferred partner of Quora, the question and answer site, and they're building things that are very specific for that platform, just showing that you can really scale to a big, successful business by attacking different niches in the market that are currently overlooked. And I think Quora is a great example of a website that we all encountered at least once in our life, but we don't think about it on a daily basis. It has a lot of traffic and one of the best SEO websites in the world. And at the same time, it's not our first go-to when we want to ask a question. We go to Google and then we end up on Quora.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, we need to finish soon. And it's a lot of information, so I don't want us to extend too much. But you invest in a lot of AI companies, so I assume you're very supportive of the technology.
I am.
Where do you see it heading?
I think we're going to be in a situation where some AI companies will exhibit that they have the ability to teach people how to use their products very well, and those companies will be very successful and scale. Then there will be many companies that will build amazing things with AI, great technology, but will not have a solid go-to market. They will have a struggle when it comes to teaching people how to use their product. Their product marketing is not going to be great, or the product market fit isn't going to be amazing. And that technology is going to be on the sidelines until we find a way to make everyone understand how to use everything. Kind of just like, it's kind of like a world where there are some things that we kind of can comprehend fast and some things will take more time. I think, for example, generating video from scratch with AI is something that is very early in the game. There's a technology called Stable Diffusion. And I think that we could comprehend how to use DALL-E 2 with images really fast, but then video might be more complicated for the same reasons why there are probably more graphic designers than there are video editors, just because there are different moving parts in something that is play with a timeline versus a static image, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that we're going to see kind of a repeat of things from the past. Some technologies will move faster and be adopted faster, and some things will take time. And I think that if you look in the past, probably there were many tools that just were not ready for everyone yet. I'll give an example. Maybe Canva blew up in the last 4 or 5 years that everybody uses Canva. And that kind of, platform existed in the past, but it was hard to convince people that there was something that was just as good as using Photoshop for the everyday Joe that is not complicated to use. So there is going to be a lot of weight on the people who do the marketing and the branding and the messaging in order to kind of determine how fast we're going to adopt every different AI solution. For the meanwhile, we're sold on creating text. We are slowly getting comfortable with generating creative with AI, mostly static creative. And I feel that in the future, we will be more comfortable with the video AI, which has that creepy element of, kind of synthesizing an AI figure of ourselves. But I think that once we develop all kinds of defense technologies to kind of recognize what's real, what's not, kind of like the antivirus or kind of image recognition of what was AI synthesized and what's not, then we'll feel more comfortable, because there is a certain aspect of us wanting to at least know, to kind of have that disclaimer that what we're watching was generated by AI. It doesn't really matter for us if it was generated. It matters for us to recognize it was generated, to not feel misleaded.
Makes sense. Well, last question. What is your advice for small business owners to stay ahead of the curve, as they say?
I think that small business owners should try every AI platform that offers a free trial. There's, a lot of different platforms that right away you have to pay. For every platform that you have to pay, it doesn't matter if you're doing text, images, videos, email marketing, designing websites from scratch. There's always a competitor that's going to offer a free trial, and I recommend learning how to sign up to these things, use them, because they're all very similar in nature. It all works a bit on prompts. I think one of the best companies that kind of gave access to this AI world that everybody can kind of utilize, and this is especially for small, medium businesses, go to Wix.com and launch a website. Even if you have a website, just go there and launch one. They have a AI set up where you actually tell Wix, what is your business? Who are your customers? What is your goal with the site? And it just generates a website from scratch.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's been around for a few years. And I know people who have worked on it closely, if it's from the head of engineering or chief AI kind of specialist that was in that project. And these things have been around for a while, and we just didn't give it the title AI. But it is complete machine learning that started a long time ago, and now anybody who wants to open a Wix site can really build it in a few clicks of a button. No more putting the button on the right and creating all these different frames. You can have the AI generate everything based on the answers you input to the AI.
That's fascinating. Wow, that was so much information. Thank you so much, Avishai. That was great.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. And thank you guys for listening or watching this episode. I think it was quite insightful, and honestly, I'm curious to start trying all of this, and I hope you guys too. And don't forget to like, share, you know the drill. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye, guys.